Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be touching on an ally of the ancients we know as the Asgard. This is obviously another Stargate video, just like the last one. The Asgard are a race of aliens that resemble the Roswell Greys people keep talking about. Anyway, to touch on them, the Asgard were a very advanced, technologically advanced race when they encountered the ancients when they came to the Milky Way. The Asgard had intergalactic ships, but they were not part of the Milky Way. They actually came from another galaxy called Thlana. Thana. Thala, that's the one. Anyway, they used their intergalactic ship to travel to the Milky Way in order to both study and observe of the native creatures of the galaxy. When the ancients arrived in the Milky Way, they encountered the Asgard. Over time, they built a relationship, as well as with two other races called the Nox and the Furlings, eventually forming a very powerful alliance. But we're going to touch on that in a different video, concerning mainly around the alliance itself. Anyway, like I said, the Asgard were a very technologically advanced race, both inhabiting many worlds and protecting many of them as well. At the time the ancients met the Asgard, they were on the verge of something very special. Generations ago, the Asgard found a way to clone bodies perfectly, so it was completely the same as, say, I cloned myself, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference at all. Anyway, the Asgard found a way to transfer their minds from one body to another, basically achieving a form of immortality, if you will. Since there was a new brain, it could also learn a lot more. A much larger intelligence than an ordinary computer, for instance. For any sort of computer to match that, it would take a long time. The Asgard had stargates as well. The ancients gave them some stargates when they became friends, most likely meeting on a planet and handing a few stargates over to the Asgard. Most likely either 1, 2, or 3. Mainly, one was on the Asgard home of Othala. That was mainly where they lived until they had to abandon it, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. The Asgard prospered for many long years with that special ability to do that, but they could also still sexually reproduce, meaning there'd be new Asgard. However, I believe it was sometime before their encounter with the ancients. I don't know, actually, it was after that. They had a disease that was mainly attacked by the Asgard. It wasn't the same disease I talked about that the ancients encountered, it was completely different. This disease killed off at least 90% of the Asgard and sterilized the other 10%. That 10% then was unable to sexually reproduce, and unfortunately, it also caused a problem. The original bodies that they were cloning from were completely destroyed, I believe. You see, copying a copy of a copy is a very dangerous thing. Say I made a copy of a video of a video of a video of a video. Making this a copy of a copy over time, there's deterioration. The original file starts to break down and there's very little left of the original. Such cellular breakdown started to create a disease that the Asgard was suffering from. They tried many different things to try and solve it. They tried all sorts of things. Eventually they found a cargo ship. No, it wasn't a cargo ship. It was a ship that was lost from the Asgard homeworld 30,000 years ago, at least sometime after the ancients left for the Pegasus galaxy. When they found it, they found that on board their crew was in suspended animation. The crew on board was before there was the accident happened. Their physiology was before the cellular breakdown started to happen and before the cloning became, well, a very last ditch resort. What they were hoping was they were going to be able to use their genetic tissue to construct clones that were more stable. Unfortunately, it didn't work. They tried many things, and unfortunately the Asgard High Council forbid one thing that the Asgard thought would work: experimentation and study on humans. I know what you're thinking, why humans? Well, Roswell Grey is only about yay high, wouldn't you think? Well, actually, they used to be the same sort of height and sort of facial similarities as humans. In fact, they are actually quite similar to us in the first place. However, after the cellular breakdown started happening, well, since there was very little left of the original, their bodies started changing over time, growing smaller and changing in very different ways. They were hoping to use our physiology as a template to construct a clone that would be, well, let's just say, more effective. However, the Asgard High Council forbid it. They thought it was immoral to experiment on the same race as the ancients. Humans, in any sort of variation, are still relatives of the ancients, and they didn't like the idea of it, and they still didn't like the idea of experimenting on one race to save another. The ends don't justify the means. However, there were several Asgard who thought that, one of which was named Loki. A lot of them took on the personas of the gods of Norse mythology to protect human populations throughout the galaxy. Actually, it's believed that that's where it was inspired from. Their names. Anyway, Loki experimented on humans on Earth for several years, including Colonel Jack O'Neill. Unfortunately, there was a problem. Jack had been visited by the Asgard a few times before, and a genetic marker had been placed in his DNA. That genetic marker made it so the clone Loki made, while it had all of Jack's memories and everything, it didn't mature to the proper age. He was more or less 14, 15 years old. Yeah, I know. Kind of hard to believe a colonel suddenly turning into a 15-year-old. Anyway, point is Loki also had inept methods. He didn't make it so the clones would survive for very long. They literally only last, 48, sometimes 72 hours. So no more than 3 days. Then Loki would swap them back. Basically what he did was, he took the original and replaced it with a clone. Then, after a certain amount of time, he'd swap them back over. Anyway, the problem is that Loki inevitably got caught by SG-1 when they found out what happened to Jack. When they found out he was a clone, they made a stakeout, gave the clone Jack a Zat Nakatel, a Gould weapon. Used it to stun Loki and get aboard his ship, where after Jack was beamed back down into his bedroom. Anyway, after that they were able to signal Thor, Loki's brother, and, well, let's just say Thor wasn't too happy. You can imagine why. Jack O'Neill was he was Thor's good friend. I mean, he'd saved Thor a few times beforehand from the Replicators, but we'll touch on the Replicators at another point. There was another group of Asgard who left for the Pegasus Galaxy sometime during the War with the Wraith. They knew that Pegasus had a human population just like the Milky Way, so what they were hoping to do was use that as an advantage. The Asgard High Council wouldn't be able to figure it out. However, while they were able to do it, they were counting on the Ancients winning the war with the Wraith, not the Wraith winning. Since the Ancients, returned to Earth, the plan backfired on them. The Wraith attacked them because they don't tolerate any advanced technology besides their own. But again, we'll touch on the Wraith some other time. Point is, they destroyed the Asgard's intergalactic ships, and they did not have the resources in Pegasus to build more. They were stranded. To hide from the Wraith, so they couldn't, do what they do. They went to a planet where the Wraith couldn't survive, a toxic atmosphere. Normally, they would just have to use simple breathing apparatuses to survive. However, the atmosphere worsened over the eons. They had to construct metal exoskeletons. It's very impressive, actually. However, due to their experiments, they actually eliminated nearly all the problems with the cloning. What they believed is the ends justify the means. The Asgard High Council, like I said, didn't believe that. They believed that they should try and find a way without harming any other living things, if at all possible. And while the Asgard may have solved the problem, sort of solved it, it was a bit too late for their brothers in the Milky Way. In the 10th season of SG-1, when the Ori were fighting to take over the Milky Way, the Asgard tried everything they could to solve their cloning problem. However, their last-ditch effort failed. It left them with a disease that was breaking their cellular structure down even faster. And unfortunately, they couldn't ascend, so they couldn't be saved from it. Their cloning and, unfortunately, the disease they suffered made it so there was no way for them to ascend and join the Ancients in the higher planes. Which is too bad, because I honestly think no other race should have deserved it anymore. And unfortunately, without that, they could not ascend and then be saved. Eventually, the Asgard High Council made a decision to end it all. They destroyed their colony, called Orilla, after giving humanity everything they had. the most advanced technology, weapons, shields, as well as Asgard core devices in all of the ships, including the Daedalus. Those cores can create anything that the core's programmed to make. For instance, food, water, replacement parts for a ship. The Asgard literally gave humanity everything they are. And to be honest, it's kind of sad. But they didn't have a choice. They gave up hope. When Daniel Jackson went to the Pegasus Galaxy, he and Rodney found an ancient laboratory in Atlantis. Unfortunately, there was a device in it that one of the ancients thought would be the final way to defeat the Wraith. It emitted a sort of an energy that interfered with Wraith hyperdrives, so whenever they entered subspace, the moment they entered it, bam, the ship would be disintegrated. Literally, I saw it myself. However, there was a small side effect. It also made the Stargate extremely unstable when they were activated. They would start building up a charge until, well, boom. At least a couple hundred nuclear bombs. Yeah. Anyway, the problem is, when he found that out, he shut the device down. But the Asgard in the Pegasus Galaxy found out about it when they walked into the lab. It sort of sent out a signal to the Atera device. The device in the lab was more like a key, really. Like a key for a front door, for instance. It was what made the whole thing work. Like a ZPM powering up the Ancient's weapons platform. Without that, the platform's useless. Anyway, point is that without that key, it wouldn't work. They knew that. They went to that facility when their planet was dying, and they couldn't risk staying out in the open because of the Wraith. I mean, their technology was advanced enough to penetrate Atlantis' shield, which stood up to the bombardment of over 30 hive ships firing on it non-stop. That's a lot of firepower. Anyway, sorry. Eventually, they found the Atera device, and when the key was added in, they attempted it again. The Wraith immediately thought the humans of Atlantis were doing it, and they took over one of their ships to try and destroy the Atera device themselves. And honestly, I don't blame them. The ancient who created the device took it back to Atlantis from the Atera device itself. Well, he was attempting to find a way to fix the problem with the Stargate, so it wouldn't cause the whole thing to go boom. That way, they could still use it, and there would be no risk themselves. And in all fairness, it's an ingenious idea, but I don't think he could have figured it out. The problem is that, for some reason, Wraith hyperdrive seem to enact on the same thing as a Stargate. Whatever the case is, it just doesn't work, and it wouldn't have affected the Ancients' ships. It mainly just affects Wraith ships, since theirs were designed by the Wraith, and since humans were designed by the Asgard. Like the one on the Daedalus, for instance, was an intergalactic hyperdrive. But I'm a little off topic there. Point is, they were going to use the Atera device to wipe out the race so they would be safe. However, they didn't care who got hurt in the process. And in some ways, I pity them. They were the last of the Asgard. Daniel told them what happened. Unfortunately, Thor and the others did not believe in the same method of fixing it, and they had to end it all. They would rather do that than let their technology fall into the hands of the Ori. They were already powerful enough. We'd hate to imagine what would happen if they got their hands on cloning technology. If you've seen Stargate, you'll remember the Priors had special abilities like telekinesis, telepathy a little bit, as well as healing and, a few others. Point is, imagine if they could somehow start cloning Priors. They could have an army of them. Just one of those Priors can stand up to quite a bit. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Comment any future videos you'd like to see, and we will see you all next time.